Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be talking to you about self-growth techniques exposed, strategies to get a new you. My journey to who I am today was not an easy one. It was fraught with many challenges. It required a lot of self-growth on my part, and I couldn't have done it without a lot of introspection, an evolution of the person that I was before I started my journey. But because of my journey, I was able to tap into a lot of opportunities and inner peace that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Because I had a really challenging and tough childhood in which I really didn't believe in myself back then. So for anybody that's interested on the path of self-growth, these are some of my hard-fought strategies and lessons learned from my experience. But beware that the journey is long and fraught with challenges, and it's not something that you can do quickly. And once you start down the journey of self-growth, it never really ends. It continues throughout your lifetime. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about my background into self-growth and my tips and strategies on self-growth. But before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, share with your friends if you like this content. And let's go. So here's the background of how I got into self-growth. I was first introduced to self-growth when I was 18 and was part of an MLM. I'm not going to say which MLM I was a part of, but it was a very big one at the time. And as a part of that network, I had to attend seminars in which they would help you grow your business. And within those seminars, there would be a lot of classes based on self-growth and pushing yourself as a person. The impression that I took away was that anybody can better their own circumstances if applied enough pressure to it, and that no one should be a prisoner to their own specific circumstances. There can be something that can be done for each situation. At the time, this was revolutionary for me because I did not understand another path in which I can grow as a person. It really seeded in my brain the beginnings of my self-growth journey. The seminars also helped me by providing me a couple of books and resources to help me on my journey. And from then on, I was hooked. I digested all the self-growth and self-help books that I could. My favorite authors are Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins. Over time, I learned and adapted their advice to my way of life. The original goal for me when I was 18 was to become a better person, a better communicator, and less arrogant. And throughout the next decade, I was able to make a lot of progress within my communications and my arrogance, but also expand on other aspects of myself. I really learned the value and importance of self-growth within each of our lives. And now I love to talk about self-growth to anyone who will listen. This was also the basis of my YouTube channel as well, to bring it to a mass audience. It's certainly not easy to do to become a better person, but it's very important that all of us try. So here are my self-growth strategies. Number 1, determine the importance of why. Before you start down the journey of self-growth, you have to understand why you're doing it in the first place. If you cannot emphatically state why you want to in the first place, then I don't suggest you start. Usually my advice would be to start small and grow your way to larger and more complicated tasks, building up that confidence as you go. But I believe self-growth is one of those exceptions to the rule. The reason is that self-growth is inherently very, very difficult, and it takes a very dedicated person a long time and large commitment in order for you to gain benefits. I dedicated many hours, days, weeks to reading, studying, and watching videos on self-growth. This was not something that I was paid for. This was all under my own time. The fact that I wanted to better myself and commit that time to it. The real danger in starting and stopping self-growth is that you might eventually get discouraged and not want to continue ever again. And that you'll ultimately give up because it's just too hard. So you need to have a good reason for starting it in the first place. So really understand and make a list of why you're doing it and how that will benefit you in the future. And here's an example of a list that you'll need to understand before you start on the journey of self-growth. Number 2, commit to the long term. If there was anything that I could tell my younger self about self-growth, is that you have to be committed for the long term. I originally thought that it was only going to take 2 or 3 years and I was going to be a better person, and that was it. That would be the end of my self-growth. Well, it didn't happen. Certain parts of myself I'm still working on to this day. And there are aspects of myself that I will have to gradually change over the next 5 to 10 years from today. When you go on the journey of self-growth, it's going to be mired with high highs and low lows. Sometimes you're feeling like you made massive progress, and sometimes you won't feel like you've made any progress in the last couple of months. Only when you look at it from a long-term perspective do you truly see the subtle changes that happens to you over time. Because changing yourself is inherently a slow process. By the time you become an adult, a lot of things that you do on a regular basis becomes habitual and thus harder to change as a result. So when you're making changes to yourself, your body and your mind has to adapt over a long period of time. The bigger the things you want to change, the harder it is to change them. But all things gradually over time do change. You just need to give it some time and patience. So when you're looking at self-growth, after you understand the why, commit to the long term of self-growth. Number 3, examine thyself. Here we get into the heart of the matter, finding out what you need to work on or change. This is one of the more difficult things that you'll ever have to do. Finding out what you're not good at and really putting it down on paper. Because it requires a lot of honesty about yourself and your failings. Good and bad aspects of yourself are critical in your understanding so that you can make a plan to better yourself. I made a couple of previous videos that really help you identify those good and bad aspects of yourself, so check them out. So before you start on the journey of self-growth, identify what are the things that you want to improve upon. These lists can encompass a wide range of things that you want to improve. From small things like changing minor habits to large things like crafting a different personality. Make sure you have that list and also identify some of the things that you need to work on prior to tackling that particular goal. For example, you might not be able to fix certain personality skills without better communication skills. So identify those things you need to work on before you hit your larger targets. So be honest with yourself and create that list to help you on your self-growth journey. Number 4, target low-hanging fruit. Once you have an idea of what you need to improve, target the easy things first. Note that when I'm talking about easy, I'm talking about relatively easy to implement and maintain over a long period of time. These are things that are easier to change and might not be part of your core personalities. They might be more of external things. For example, these are things like fixing your wardrobe so you can look better overall, taking improv classes to help you better your communication skills, or learning a specific skill set to help other aspects of your self-growth. The other aspect of this low-hanging fruit is that you can also use this opportunity to learn about self-growth in general. Things like finding resources online, reading books on self-growth, or even finding a mentor to help you. The key is to get into action as quickly as possible and to gain confidence in the actions that you complete. Because once you get into the habit of completing things, you make it more sustainable because your brain rewards you for completing tasks. And over time, things get easier and less intimidating for you to start in the first place. So you'll have that positive energy whenever something relates to self-growth. So after you get your list complete, target the easy things first and work diligently towards them. Number 5, build upon previous successes. After you get a few successes under your belt, then you start to target the heavy hitters. These are things that are long-term in nature and you might even need to seek professional help with it. For example, think of changing core personality issues or emotional problems. These will require a lot of work and consistent process over a long period of time in order for you to get better. And these are things that change gradually over time, so don't expect an overnight success. In these cases, it's good to have a therapist or close friends to help you be accountable in your progress. From my own experience, this process isn't easy. It took me 5 to 10 years of hard work to really make gradual changes in myself. And it still takes consistent effort to maintain it so I don't backslide into my previous self. So any work that's started in this section, have a time horizon window of at least 5 to 10 years. Commit to that. And depending on how old you are, it might get longer the older you are. Because the older you are, the harder it is to start changing things about yourself. So dig your heels in, take the smaller successes, build upon that confidence into larger, more challenging work. And last but not least, number 6, setbacks will happen. Things sometimes just won't work, and you'll feel like you've wasted your time. That's okay, sometimes these things just happen. When you're on the journey of self-growth, sometimes the path you take isn't what you expected and you might not want it to continue. In the world of self-development, sometimes when you make little or no progress or you start to backslide, it can be like a black sheep. Nobody wants to hear about it. Everybody wants to hear about the success stories of personal growth, but nobody ever wants to hear about the bad sides to it. But it happens all the time. Sometimes we just halt our self-growth progress. The general reason is that the change is occurring too quickly for us, or we didn't really want to do it in the first place. Say, for example, we initially wanted to change our character or our morals, but then we decided that it was a bad idea to do so. Usually the why is enough to get us over that hump so that we know why we're doing it in the first place. Because along our journey of self-growth, sometimes we change what the goalposts are, and that's okay, that's part of the journey. And when setbacks happen and you feel the lack of progress, take that in, reflect on that. Find out why it's happening to you and see whether or not you want to overcome it. If the why is truly worth it, then you just need to be patient and commit to doing what you're already doing. Just give it some time. If it's not worth it for you to continue, then try something else on your self-growth list. So setbacks happen all the time in self-growth. Be patient and know that if you really wanted to do this, you can push through and overcome any obstacles. So those were my tips and strategies on hacking my way through self-growth. I really believe that everyone should go through some form of self-growth within their lives. We are not fully formed at birth, and certainly it doesn't end when we exit childhood. And even if we had the perfect childhood, every adult has something he or she can work on to improve themselves and their lives. Going through a challenging childhood and then embarking on the journey of self-growth have helped me become a more complete person in my adulthood. It's definitely not an easy journey, but if you can understand the why and commit to the long term of self-growth, you'll be a better person in the end and it'll be worth it. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what you think of self-growth and what would you do to better yourself. And I'll see you next time.